Hello everyone and welcome to Hort Talk. This is episode 5 and today we're talking about allergy awareness and Natashas Law. I have 3 very special guests today and I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves.
Thank you, Alex. Good afternoon. My name is Caroline Benjamin. I'm the founder of Food Allergy Aware, which was set up in about 2013 to assist the food service industry on being able to provide for the food allergy guest. And since then, I've done a number of events for HTA and other sort of sectors as well. Over to you, Ruth.
Thanks, Caroline. My name is Ruth Holroyd and I write a blog which is called whatallergy.com, which is all about allergies, eczema, asthma, and it's now 12 years old, which is nearly a teenager, which is a bit scary. I'm also a writer and I have written 2 books. One of them is called The Reluctant Allergy Expert, How to Kill the Fear That Anaphylaxis Could Kill You, which I wrote just at the beginning of COVID, and it's all about how to live with the anxiety and the fear of knowing that a food could make you really ill and could potentially kill you. And it's actually quite hard to live with the anxiety and the fear that a lot of allergy people live with. And I've wrote another book, which is a bit more therapy, which was The Shape of Skin, which is poems for people with eczema. And it's just a real passion of mine, really, to normalise these conditions because we don't hear about them very much. And quite often people still don't know what anaphylaxis is and they haven't seen anyone with chronic eczema, so people can feel quite alone. So it's my passion to help raise awareness. So thank you for inviting me today. This is great.
Thank you, Ruth.
Hi, I am Julian Ponan. I'm founder of Creative Nature, a top 14 allergen-free brand. The reason why Creative Nature really started was because of my own anaphylaxis. I'm allergic to peanuts, tree nuts, chickpeas, lentils, sesame, you name it, I pretty much got it. So it came out of frustration and also sitting alone at the allergy table, which is what they called it at my school. Not being able to hang out with my friends and having to sit completely separate, eat separate food, it makes you feel in a way isolated. So I wanted to make an inclusive brand that enabled more people to eat around the same table and enjoy delicious food. I'm also a ambassador for the anaphylaxis campaign and the Teal app, and I advocate as much as possible for people with allergies.
Fantastic. Thank you all very much for agreeing to be on Hort Talk today. So I'm going to start with a question, and I like to start with a big one. So it's quite a broad subject, but when we talk about allergy awareness, and specifically, we're going to be talking a little bit about Natashas Law. What are we actually talking about?
Okay, I can sort of start there with food allergies. So with the food allergies, they are the protein within food. So we've got 14 that we need to be aware of, which everyone is aware of from the FIR regulation. But we also need to be aware of those allergens outside of the 14 because they are growing. And one of the things that Julianne mentioned is that she is allergic to some of the legumes that are out there. And we know that vegan is becoming very popular at the moment. And we know that a lot of vegan products contain pea protein or other pulses. And because businesses at the moment don't have to label those fully, it's very difficult for those people to eat out. So what we need people to be aware of is, yes, so we've got those 14 major allergens, but we also need to be aware of what's in our food that's coming. And Natashas Law is going to help with that with regard to the pre-pack for direct sell. So the sort of story around Natashas Law is that Natasha Edna-Laperouse was purchasing a baguette from Pret-a-Manger at the airport prior to catching a flight, British Airways flight. There was signposting. Pret-a-Manger weren't doing anything wrong. There was signposting to say, ask about the allergens. But because it was all in a grab and go area, she looked at the labelling that was on there. It didn't say anything about sesame flour. Normally when you see something with sesame, it has sesame seeds on the top, so it's an indication that there's sesame there. But because it was sesame flour, obviously it wasn't obvious. So she grabbed and go and took the baguette and obviously ate it just prior to boarding, but reaction happened when she was on the flight, and she had an anaphylactic reaction. So there was a couple of things that we need to take away from the coroner, is it was highlighted that Pret-a-Manger were informed by at least 6 or 7 different families about the issues of their labelling, specifically mentioning sesame on a few of the cases. But at that time, Pret-a-Manger did not have a system in place to capture near misses or potential issues or problems. Had they done, then obviously we might be in a different situation today. So that's one thing to take away, is that actually, you know, if there is an issue and somebody's warning you about that issue, you need to record it as well as having an accident. And the other thing that was taken away was how the EpiPens were used on Natasha. So also making sure that staff within any business are aware how to give an EpiPen, and that they should be given in separate legs, and also that person shouldn't be moved, so shouldn't be made to get up, get down, etc. So the seriousness behind the lessons learned with Natashas Law needs to be taken into account.
I've had allergies all my life. I'm 48 now. I'm allergic to quite a lot of things, not sesame, but nuts, dairy, wheat, soya. And a couple of those things that were learnt on that case I wasn't really aware of until very recently. And certainly I was never told to inject in one thigh and then the other thigh by anyone until really recently. So I know I've also been in an incident where the communication broke down and I had done everything right. I had a phone before I'd even been into the restaurant, and I told them that I had these allergies. Particularly my bad ones are dairy and peanuts, so I really stressed those ones. And even when the food came and everything was checked, they still gave me dairy, and I ended up in intensive care. And mistakes were made then by the ambulance crew. So I think there's a lot of communication. I mean, we're not talking about that today, but if even ambulance paramedics didn't know that you should not get someone to get up and walk, they got me to walk to the ambulance. They didn't administer my adrenaline, despite they came so quickly. I hadn't done it yet, and I was holding the pens and saying, right, I'm going to do adrenaline. They were like, you're okay, you don't need to, and then got me to walk to the ambulance. So there are, even in professionals, there are things that aren't quite clear. There's a lot of awareness that we need to build, and confidence in ourselves. That I don't know about you, Julianne, but it's really scary when you start having anaphylaxis, and it's scary using adrenaline, and we go into shock and we don't always do things in the right way. So I was going to ask Julianne whether you have any experiences like that. Or
Yeah, definitely. I think using that adrenaline, that EpiPen, it is so scary. It's something that people don't always see as a scary thing. So for me, I've got a phobia with needles as well. So on top of having to have an adrenaline, it's that feeling.
Oh no.
it can be quite a traumatic experience. And I remember being a child and running away from my mum and dad. They're going, no, you need to have the EpiPen. I'm going, no, I started running. And obviously that is very scary for a child, and it's important that we educate children from a very young age. And I do think that is so important. At the moment, there's so many things in primary school education, yet they do not teach you how to use an EpiPen. And I find that I cannot understand that. Why would you not teach something that could save someone's life? So something like that is really important. Then back to Natashas Law, I am allergic to sesame, and it is quite a scary allergen to have, because you just assume if something's got sesame on the top, okay, it's got sesame in. But I would have never have thought that the sesame would have been baked into the bread. I honestly had absolutely no clue that would have been the case. So Natashas Law will change people's lives, like mine and Ruth's, from that point of view, where we don't know an allergen is in a product and we can actually read it for ourselves. Because at the end of the day, everyone's really busy. Ruth and I did a Food Unwrapped documentary, and we actually went into London eateries. When you go into the eatery, they're too busy to take the time to explain to you the allergen anyway. So you're reliant on labels. And if you are going to be reliant on labels and take it into your own hands, I think the least thing that we should be able to have is full declaration of ingredients, which is what's needed and what's going to change.
You mentioned the main 14 allergens at the beginning there, Caroline, and we need to be aware that there are many outside of that as well. You will now see on the menu lots of gluten-free options and vegan options. However, do you think as an industry we need to get better at widening that variety for allergy sufferers?
Definitely. I think one of the things that we should highlight is that milk is about 1% higher than gluten for allergies in the UK. We do an amazing lot for gluten-free and celiacs, and that's brilliant. But actually, if you're dairy-free, trying to find a starter or a dessert when you go out for a meal is really still hard work. One of the things that we need to be clear of, yes, we've got a lot of foods coming in that are vegan, but vegan foods are not always suitable for somebody with an allergy. And that's really important for people to understand that, because there's the Vegan Society allow a may contains on their labeling for their accreditation. So there is a risk that that product is made on the same line or on the same factory, etc. And I think one of the things that you need to be aware of when you're providing for the customer, if it's vegan, don't assume it's milk-free, don't assume it's egg-free. You need to read the labels and check. And if in doubt, go back to your manufacturer. Obviously, may contains or precautionary allergen labeling is voluntary. So it may be that it appears on it, but just because it doesn't appear on it doesn't mean it's still safe. You still need to be able to go down the manufacturing route and double check it on your specs, etc. But I think, you know, we do need more education. We're being taught at the moment about Natashas Law. We're doing webinars coming out of our ears at the moment. But for an example, I was down in Wales, and I went to a very sort of rustic type of venue. And I wanted to have a brunch, and they had it with potatoes, chorizo and poached egg. So I asked the lady behind the counter to check with the kitchen whether the chorizo contained milk. They went into the kitchen and she came out and said, actually, we don't know. We've decanted the product into a tub and we don't have the labelling. Now, you need to be understanding that just because you decant something, that doesn't diminish your responsibility. You need to make sure that you retain labelling or you have that information. And there's so many businesses not getting the FIR regulations right. So how, you know, we need to push Natashas Law, but we need to get the basics right before we can go to the next step. And I think that's a really important thing to highlight.
And say you say you have an allergy, and I go and eat out with my friends, I'm going to pick somewhere that is more inclusive to me. So actually, I'm going to be bringing business, because it tends to be myself that will be the person that chooses where we go, because at the end of the day, I'm as you say, the most difficult one to cater for. So in turn, I bring more business with me. So the simple thing to do is, first of all, finding more inclusive products, looking at their actual offering. Like, why do they have to have, for example, there are so many products in the market at the moment, vegetable spring rolls, duck spring rolls, all of these things, they've literally just changed to add an allergen in, add sesame. Why do these things, why have they added an allergen instead of removing it? If you could remove as many of the top 14 as possible, that will be fantastic. I know there are allergies outside the top 14. I have them myself. But if we have some sort of step forward, this will at least achieve a little bit more of inclusivity.
Definitely. And I think where you were sort of saying about choosing where to go, if we go out as a family and there's 5 of us, if I can't have a dessert, nobody else is going to have a dessert possibly. So again, that's about £35-40, which is extra, which would have been added onto the bill. And same in the circumstances for a starter. If there's not a choice of a starter that I can have, then everyone else is like, well, let's just go straight to main course. So again, it's that business, it's that unique selling point. If I find somewhere that I can have a starter, main course and a dessert, every time I would go for it if it's there. If there's a choice for me to have one, I'm going to have a pudding. And literally, more often than not, it's gluten-free and dairy-free or milk-free. It's not available, but we need to, like you say, change and adapt a recipe. Sticky toffee pudding and make it, if it's vegan, why can't you just make it gluten-free as well, to try and have at least 2 choices that somebody's gluten and dairy-free that can have on that menu. And one of the things that we highlight is that fruit salad is not a pudding. Literally, it's not. We go for dinners and you get offered a melon as a starter. You have your main course, which half the things are missing, like a Yorkshire pudding or your stuffing or your sausage. And then you have a dessert and it's a fruit salad. And so it's exotic fruit salad. It's like, that's still fruit salad. So again, being aware that you need to make a choice for people.
But if you're going somewhere new, it's really hard to find out where to go. So I think it's really important that companies that can cater for allergies make that clear on their websites, make that clear, go in on allergy menus, having information like which things are gluten-free and dairy-free and making it easy for people to understand. And obviously those allergy Bibles, which we all love and hate, which are great big books with everything in. If it's not written down, it's really hard for your staff and for customers to find out. At least I can then look through and find out things that are going to be okay for me. And I don't think all companies have those.
I would like to add to that, Ruth. You know, when you say about that allergen menu, so for example, if they run out of an ingredient, I think it should be taken off the menu, that dish. It shouldn't be served, because at the end of the day, if, for example, they then add dairy into it or use a product or a sauce that has a may contain dairy, it then the staff member probably goes, yes, it's dairy free. However, look what happened to Owen. He unfortunately died because something wasn't relayed back to the chef. So I do think it's so important that we have these sort of set in stone, this is the allergen menu, and it's completely safe.
So thinking about those processes of communication, you mentioned Owen there and how that was a breakdown of communication from front of house staff to the kitchen. What can we do to make those processes more secure?
We need to think about training, and we need to think about what's being supplied down from FSA. We had all the allergy sheets and information given back when the FIR came out with. There's not a lot updated. So I think they need to think about what resources are there for people to help. I mean, we're aware of an IT company which are offering a free service for anybody that's doing their allergen information. So they can input the information in, they can use that platform, and from that platform they can get the output for the allergen information, but also the full ingredient information. So we need to be aware of what type of businesses out there that can help, but also training. We need to have more specific training, mandatory training. So every manager should have a level 3 food allergen training, as they do with food safety. So we have mandatory training with food safety out there at the moment, but if we had every manager doing at least a level 3, then they could actually do proper induction training for their staff at a better level. Because at the moment, people are using the Food Standard Agency's online course, which is good, but it doesn't, it's not sector specific, it's not business specific. And businesses need to have their own induction training course within their business. And it's not rocket science. We provide an induction training PowerPoint which can be given, and it's there for them to be able to tailor that information. So we need to encourage better training. There should be some sort of consistent way in which allergen information is provided, and where possible, full ingredients at one end of the scale.
Yeah, so I don't think they get regular training. Like, I don't even know how often, but I wouldn't imagine they get trained regularly on this kind of thing. And it's not something chefs get taught about very much. And I do think it should have as much importance, as Caroline was saying, as you could give someone food poisoning. That is taken really seriously, and everybody knows, and there are signs up saying wash your hands and use these knives for these chopping boards for meat and these for vegetables. It should be the same strictness for allergens, and it isn't. It's only kind of working where the places that are really trying to cater for us. And until that changes, until we give the same emphasis to allergies as we do to food poisoning, I think it's just a battle for a lot of people, because they're not getting the training regularly enough. They don't even know how can you remember what the top 14 allergens are after having one lot of training, which you can do online and whiz through really quickly, and we need to make that better.
Definitely, and there's so many resources out there. The Anaphylactic Campaign, Allergy UK, we have fact sheets that we produce every couple of weeks. There's so many different places where information can be given out, and you just put it on your notice board for people to read. You have your 10-minute briefing or 20-minute briefing once a week with your staff about certain particular ways of doing things. Then you say to them, right, there's this allergy chart here, I want you to read it and then sign that you've read it. And it's not always the most successful, but something better than nothing. And we know that obviously at the moment people are looking at Owen's Law. If businesses don't step up and start doing what they should be doing properly anyway, then if we see the introduction of Owen's Law, that could be something else that might be something that could cause them maybe more of a challenge. But we need to think about doing stuff in a positive way, and if it's seen to be done properly, then maybe that won't happen in the same way. So we can't guarantee it.
do you think there has been an increase with the number of people diagnosed with food allergies? And is there a lack of understanding within the catering industry of the differences between an intolerance and a food allergy? And what do you think we can do to help encourage willingness to create menus that is more inclusive of those?
Definitely, 100%. It's not just the UK though, it's a global issue. I think it's every 3 minutes someone is referred to the ER for a food allergy, which is in the US, which is incredibly high. And for the UK, I think it's 1 in 12 children now. So that's 2 in every classroom that have a food allergy in particular. That's not counting hay fever and other allergies. So it's definitely a growing market. However, I feel that veganism, everyone seems to have jumped on the bandwagon and people are producing vegan products. However, as you mentioned earlier, this may contain issue. Just because someone says something's vegan does not mean it's dairy free or milk free. That is just not the case, and it's becoming very dangerous for people like Ruth. Luckily, I've grown out of my dairy allergy, but for friends, they've gone, oh yes, this is vegan, I can eat this, put it straight in their mouth, and I've gone, have you checked that it's got may contain? And it's like, oh well, it said it's vegan, and which is really, really worrying. And I want to sort of expand on this in the free from sections. If you look at in any major supermarket at the moment, they have stuck vegan on so many things in the free from area, and I think around 80 to 90% have a may contain on. The whole free from section is turned into the gluten-free aisle, and we have this constant argument going back and forth on, you don't need a gluten-free aisle. What you actually need is that inclusivity aisle so that people can actually go there for a need, not just a lifestyle requirement. But yeah, I'm sure Ruth, you can probably expand a lot more, as you did an amazing blog on veganism as well.
Well, I did. It created a bit of a hoo-ha. Are you talking about the blog where I was telling celiacs and vegans to get lost?
A little bit, but it was all done very well.
Because it's difficult. I think celiacs is different because they are made really ill. But if a vegan eats something that contains eggs or dairy, they'd never know. If it contained meat, they'd never know. And I think that's the problem, that companies that are making products for vegans, obviously they're coming from a point where they are wanting to make it plant-based, and there are lots of reasons for going vegan. But the reasons for being allergic they're not a choice-based. We don't have a choice. And if we get given the wrong thing, it could be fatal.
Are there any examples you can give us of some really good experiences that you have had eating out? And what were those little things that made it so special and so good? Who's going to go first?
Go on then, Ruth.
Gosh, I've had so many really good meals out. I think, well, it's a place that I go back to regularly, and it is because they seem to just they've been doing it for a really long time, and it's called Lucy's in Ambleside in the Lake District. And there are probably 50%, I would say more than 50% of the menu is already gluten and dairy free, which is 2 of my allergens are catered for. They've got lots of choice. And so then when you're asking the staff, you may only have to ask about 2 or 3 of your allergies, and some people only have 1. And it's just a really lovely place to be able to order and know that you can choose from starters, choose from the mains, and choose from the puddings. And like Caroline said earlier, if that happens, I have starter, main and pudding, because it's so rare. And then, like Caroline said at the beginning, everyone else does too. Whereas the minute somebody isn't having it, everyone feels like, oh no, I won't have one either, because I don't want people waiting around for me to finish. And there's so many good examples, way more than the bad ones.
I don't eat out an awful lot, to be completely honest, but when I have, there's been a couple of chains that have been really good. One is Las Iguanas. They have it all on an iPad, and I find it great because the server leaves you the iPad. You can just search through yourself, and I feel a bit more comfortable rather than someone standing over me, like saying, right, you can eat this, this, and this. And I usually ask them to come back and go, oh, what would you recommend as a person with allergies to this? And that's been really helpful for me, because a lot of the times when I have gone in there, they've gone, oh, well, actually, we had someone in before that had a nut allergy and they chose this. And that gave me more peace of mind. There's been other places where the chefs actually come out and spoken to me, and that's been fantastic. I'm probably like a person that triple checks everything, just because I've had a lot of experiences in restaurants when I was younger and actually had an anaphylactic shock and gone to hospital. So it has been very sort of touch and go with me when I would decide to eat out or not, and I'll just move on if I don't think that they can cater for me. But no, definitely agree with you, Ruth. There's so many restaurants catering as well, but you just have to speak up about your allergy when you get there.
Definitely. And I mean, I don't normally dine in 5-star hotels and restaurants, but one of the places that if I go to London that we go to is One Aldwych and Indigo, because their restaurant literally is completely gluten and dairy free, and they can manage allergens, and they've got the training. So Dominic there changed his menu, and for them, their unique selling point, when they announced that they were gluten and dairy free, when they did actually put it in the paper, their bookings went up by over 25%, and year on year their bookings are up by 12%, whereas a lot of people are going down in sales. You know, I don't often go to that type of restaurant, but I know that it's safe. So one of the things that I'd like to do is go for an afternoon tea. Now, I've been for afternoon teas and I've had less than everybody else. You just get crummy sandwiches, you get a fruit stick, and you get a chocolate brownie, and everyone else is eating gorgeous cream cakes and everything else. But with One Aldwych, you can guarantee that you're going to get the same as everybody else. That you're going to get that deluxe chocolate cake, or you're going to get that deluxe mousse, or the different types of things, or sorbet, etc. The nice bits everyone else is getting. And I think that's what you want to sort of aim for. Try to make it look the same as everybody else's, and that's the positive. The garden centre that I went to in Guildford, I had a fish cake for my lunch. It was like, oh, I've not had fish cakes out. I make them myself, but it's nice to be able to go out and eat normally and have those types of things as well. So, and to be fair, a lot of the garden centres are quite, like, say, individual and different, and we tend to stick to garden centres rather than motorway service stations, because you can actually find something for fresh that you can eat.
So, as a quick summary, it's about education, understanding where the need is, what the allergens are. It's about correct implementation and then communication, not only from the customer to the staff, but throughout the whole supply chain. Thank you all so much for agreeing to be our guests this afternoon. You've been listening to episode 5 of Hort Talk on allergy awareness. Stay safe, everyone. Take care.